Saad started with a cruise metaphor with our straps. I am your cruise director for today. Pramita, I'll be moderating and I'll be trying to keep us all on track. I want to start off with just a few things of housekeeping that I want to get started. First of all, you'll see some blue boxes on your tables. These boxes are filled with candy and pens and paper. And, we want that to be an inspiration to you, however you want to take it. A little bit of sugar, a little bit of sweetness, and some thoughts. So please, use them at your will. A couple other things. First of all, you've heard this from a lot of folks. Download the conference app. We do have a few sessions that include polls, and if you want to participate in the polling activity, you'll need the app, and you need to add the session to your app. If you need any help on this, look for me or look for any of us with the orange lanyards. A couple other things. We will have Digital Commons office hours today, and you can sign up for those also on the app. They're running from 12:30 to 4 today, and tomorrow from 9:30 to 4:45. So you can sign up for one and talk to one of our team members anytime during the day. And then finally, a couple more things. One about the app. So some of these slides are all available on the app, and you can go, if you look and add the session, you can go to the bottom and you'll see the attachments. You can download the slides that way. Okay, so without further ado, I will hand it over to our next sessions. We've had a few discussions of AI already, and we have these higher level AI discussions. Zainab and I were talking a little bit about how do we connect the dots to what we're doing day to day. And so I'm so happy to announce Krista Johnson-Perkins, Todd Bruns, and Sarah Norris, who are going to take it away to that next level. So come up.
Maybe pull it a little bit so we can look at each other as if we're actually having a conversation. Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for that great intro, Pramita, and delighted to have everyone here today. Again, I know this is our first session, so of course we have to start with the elephant in the room of AI, but I'm delighted to be joined by two of our lovely community in the DC world to talk a little bit about their experiences as well, thinking about discoverability, which of course we're going to go into a couple of sessions, I think, throughout the next 2 days. Is discoverability is a huge thing that is all in our minds, to the same point that Saad made on open access. Well, how do we live that journey if we're worried about bots being open as well? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll also cover as well some of the ancillary pieces around AI and how it allows us to get eyeballs to and through our IRs as well, and do so with integrity and thinking about that user experience and that journey. And last, as we were preparing for this session, we ended up talking a fair bit about accessibility. One, because of obviously April and the next week's slightly intimidating deadline, but certainly also how that's actually a foundational piece of readiness for discoverability and integrity. So the way we're going to set our session up today is we're going to spend the first half kind of doing some kind of questions and answers with our panelists here. And then we'll actually throw it to the crowd, because as we were also thinking about the architecture of this panel, we're all kind of in the weeds and living different scary, fun, exciting, overwhelming journeys. And there's a lot of expertise in the room. So we wanted to surface that as well. So I'll be kind of playing the role of moderator. Again, as Pramita said, I'm Krista Johnson-Perkins, and I'm the Aide Director of Product Management at Digital Commons. And I've been here since January of last year, so I'm still kind of a newbie. I did sadly miss Paul's intro to the tractor exhibit or whatever it was, so I have to go check that one out for sure. But let me hand this over to my lovely colleagues for their intros.
Hi, everyone. I'm Todd Bruns. I'm the Institutional Repository Librarian and Head of Scholarly Communication at Eastern Illinois University. We've been with Digital Commons since 2010. So I've been through a few journeys with these folks. And I do want to say for this session, I consider myself an H21K expert on AI. Now, if you know what that means, it means hell if I know. So it's moving so fast. There's so many aspects to it. I do have thoughts on it, but they are no better than anyone else's. And we had 2 fantastic plenary sessions earlier. So I think we're going to have a great conversation.
And I +1 what Todd said. Definitely not an expert, but looking forward to having continued conversation with all of you about what AI means in Digital Commons. I'm Sarah Norris. I am the Digital Initiatives Coordinator for the University of Central Florida's repository called STARS. A couple of my colleagues are here as well. Raise your hands, everyone. Paige and Martha. And they have been deeply involved in a lot of AI workflows and processes to help streamline the work that we do. So I really come from a positionality of, again, more efficiencies, leveraging AI to do our work better, but also thinking ahead about how do we use large language models or other Gen AI tools to help better discoverability and access.
Great. Okay. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So the first theme would be on discoverability. And so when you guys think about that, discoverability today, how has that definition kind of shifted now that AI is playing kind of a mediating role in terms of access to your repositories? Todd, can I go to you first?
Sure. So one of the things that I'm most interested in terms of like AI as a tool for our repository is how it can make connections between the content in our repository that might be different. That's what AI is supposed to do well, right? It's supposed to find connections very much faster than humans can. So if you were to search my repository to keep for me, there's a Todd Bruns who was a student at the School of Technology. There's a Todd Bruns who has been chair of Faculty Senate for several years. There's a Todd Bruns who's the head of scholarly communication. These are all very disparate Todd Brunses, which all add up to a certain story. A lot of times people are coming to our repository wanting to know about a certain thing or a certain person. And if we had some kind of AI tool that could kind of search the disparate collections in our repository and make those connections to tell that story, I think that's a great potential use of discoverability. Now, the flip side of discoverability that I want to say that concerns me a bit is that everything in our repository is Creative Commons licensed. So, and we put on the most restrictive Creative Commons license. We put on the non-derivative, non-commercial attribution license. Now, this hasn't really been tested in courts yet, but one might make the argument, it could conceivably make the argument that large language models are violating non-derivative constantly by scraping content and using it. Like I said, that hasn't gone to the courts, hasn't been, relayed out there. But one of the interesting things that I think Creative Commons is doing is they're putting forth the Creative Commons signals, where you are also able to say this content may or may not be used for certain types of large language model scraping and that kind of thing. These are two different considerations that I've had.
You're speaking my love language and copyright and and what that means with licensing. I do think there's that piece of it where how do you disambiguate the license and intersect with fair use? And again, as you said, we don't have clarity with case law at this point, so what that's going to look like is going to depend. I love signals and providing transparency, so I talked about that as well, being transparent and discoverability, helping people understand if your content is in a repository, what might happen. Might it be harvested by large language models, both internally if we utilize it potentially with digital commons, but broadly. And when I think about discoverability, I think one thing that I had an example of recently, which sort of put it into perspective for scholarly stuff, was actually my significant other. He was using ChatGPT as a search engine on a frequent basis. I was asking him for something. He's like, let me look it up real quick. And I was like, oh, great, he's going to Google it. No, he went straight to ChatGPT, and I was like, oh my gosh, what, did you just go to that first? And he's like, yeah, because I like the context. It understands what I've searched before. It gives me more information. And so I think about digital commons really more from that IR discoverability aspect of the personalization. Is there a way in which the repository can provide those more personalized experiences, and with potentially an option to opt in or opt out of that? That's another piece of, again, transparency, consent. So many of our students on campus, especially some of our faculty, we naturally think are going to be resistant, but our students in particular really want the ability to be able to have ownership of whether they engage or don't engage with AI. So I think that's another really important piece with the discoverability.
Yeah, I love that optionality. And my spouse is actually named Chat. So we say, oh, let's go ask Morgan real quick. And that's how we start our search experience. I love that. But you're right, that does add, again, you have every search history you ever made on unicorns, and it says, oh, we talked about unicorns in their natural habitat, and now we talk about them in their food preferences, and what, if you're gonna go on a date with a unicorn, it's gonna know already all the things. Horrible metaphor, thank you for sticking me with that one. And so then thinking about that same idea again, as you kind of touched on this personalization thing of as folks are discovering the keep or stars on their way into obviously through an LLM or of some sort, how do you think about that experience from I'm going over here to ask Morgan or Milo my question, and then somehow I do want to ultimately end up into a repository where there is that personalized experience. What are you guys thinking about when it comes to that journey?
Well, I think one of the ways that people might buy into AI is if they think there's security, if they think that there's trust and responsibility there. And so I think if they were to search Morgan, is it? And they were to get some results, which then refer to say you can find more information in the keep or however that's phrased. I see that sometimes with ChatGPT searches where it will come up with here's your result and here's some additional sources. Right? That kind of thing I think would be helpful, because then they can see, this is actually coming from an institutional repository. So that I think would be useful.
Yeah, definitely. And I bet everybody in the room who looks at their dashboard report is probably getting refers from ChatGPT, Perplexity, and a myriad of other different Gen AI tools. So helping people contextualize that, we know that they're getting referred to. So I think ways that we might be able to articulate that in our repository in some way, or the outreach that we do, can also help people better understand what, again, is that interoperability between these large-scale LLMs and our repository. And then on our side, I know at my institution and probably many of yours, and this was brought up in the keynote, sort of the walled garden or the specific LLM for your institution. People feel there is that more trust and authenticity there. And so is there a role in which we could create something like that with digital commons as well? Maybe creating, again, that sort of local space that might have more trust and more buy-in from our institution when they know it's just bounded to that specific area as opposed to the wilds of LLM.
Right. Yeah, I love the ChatGPT. I was kind of like, ooh, can we do one of those? That'd be super fun, right? Cool. So now thinking, again, that same kind of line of moving outside the repository and now AI into the repository, how are you guys thinking about that new experience once they actually get to the Keep or stars? What's the value that AI can add to that context, that personalization? What are you guys thinking about in that regard?
I think it'd be great if we had AI concierge, like if they come to the Keep and it's essentially a chat bot of what are you looking for, and there would need to be a lot of work that can go into that because my institution is trying a chat bot at the institutional level, which the library actually shut off for our pages because you would ask it basic questions like when does the school year start, and it would say that's a good question, maybe you should go ask this other person. I mean, it wasn't actually answering the question. And so we're like, we don't want that kind of thing on a library page, no. So there would be a lot of training that needs to go into that. But right now, when you come to the Keep, our repository is big. We're the second largest repository in the state of Illinois, which I'm very proud of, but that means there's a lot of structure there, and there's a lot of content. And so we have an A to Z list where you can find things. We have certain, Panther tracks, which I'm going to talk about tomorrow. That's a certain section of the Keep and that kind of thing. But if you're able to do what most people want to do, which is just come to the Keep, there's a chat box there, what are you looking for? And then they could type in a few things and it would look at our content, pull these things together from different collections intelligently, and then say, here's a few avenues that you can pursue. So I think that's one of the ways I would like to see that used. The other thing is more back end, which is I'm a one-person shop. I used to have support staff, but our university has shrunk some, so I no longer have support staff. So my repository has gotten bigger and more complex as I've lost manpower. And so what I'd like to leverage AI to do is to speed up some things, like speed up metadata production, speed up keyword things. I would love a search on the disciplines list even, because if I'm just doing uploading one thing at a time, I'm like, okay, the 3-tier discipline, where does this fit? I'd love to just plop it in there and get some suggestions, which you do get, by the way, through Scholars of the EIU. Pure, that's the platform. We call it Scholars of the EIU. So things like that would be very helpful.
I feel like there might be someone in the room who also can talk to you about leveraging OpenAI and the discipline selection. I'm looking at you, Paul. Sarah, how about you? And Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, I love the idea of chatbots, especially, and even maybe a step further, sort of a public version and a bounded version. So if you're logged in, again, this could be an opt-in, opt-out functionality. I think this could be really interesting, where if you are logged in And that chatbot can remember the different searches that you've done within the repository to, again, better help contextualize the work that you're doing. I think about our grad faculty who are working with theses and dissertation students who may be looking at old examples and, again, want to contextualize that for that student. That could be a really interesting option. And then I do like some of the things that we get in a Google search where, again, it gives you kind of that high level look. Is that something that could also be added or incorporated into something like a digital commons search?
Love that. Love all those ideas. You alluded to this just now, and I think it was all actually in reference in my brain to our conversation about environmental impact. And I love that one of the speakers this morning referenced it as one of the tenets at their institution. So when you think about the optionality, it's like, okay, cool. If you are aware that there's an environmental impact to this search, rock and roll, you're doing it knowingly versus, oh, I actually also know and I don't want to go and pursue it because of that reason. Maybe I would choose my use cases more selectively if I knew about the impact. How do you guys get questions about that from your stakeholders, from whom, and what sort of dialogue happens around that?
Yeah, I think we get it from a variety of stakeholders, but especially our students. So we just had an AI day on campus, and that was focused on student panels, student interest. So again, rather than faculty driven, it was really student centric. And one of the student panels that we had, all of the 4 panelists, the environmental concerns were the primary concern. They were like, I have to use this in class. I can see some of the benefits for X, Y, and Z. We had one student who was in statistics, so going back to our keynote, and they were like, yes, I love it for statistical analysis. It works great for that. But what I don't like is when a faculty member says, you need to do this assignment and use this kind of ChatGPT or other thing to do the work when I could do it on my own. I don't feel like I'm learning. So from the environmental standpoint, we really are trying to just make people aware. So acknowledging those students when those conversations come up and that opt-in, really focusing on the agency to be able to use it or not use it. I think they're having a push-pull, though, with requirements versus the environmental constraints.
Seems fair, yeah. How about you, Todd?
So the bane of being a chair of faculty senate is you end up involved with nearly everything. So AI on our campus is a huge deal. Like right now, our union is negotiating for our next contract, and one of the sticking points is AI. Like what are acceptable uses, what aren't. They're trying to work out the language with the administration. At the library where I work, part of our portfolio process is we submit peer reviews for each other. And one of my colleagues submitted peer reviews that were AI generated, which we got a complaint because I'm also on the department committee for portfolios. I'm on too many things. We got a complaint from that faculty that got the peer evaluation because she said, I never approved or okayed of my portfolio being submitted to an LLM, which it would have had to be to get this peer review. So that's a factor. We've had one student who was accused of cheating because the faculty member used an AI tool that's supposed to determine if they used AI, but AIs hallucinate, right? And so this student had not actually cheated, but they were being accused of it, and this was a big deal. And then we've had other situations where faculty have been complaining for a while now about students using AI to cheat. Well, now we're getting students who are complaining about faculty using AI to do lectures and this kind of thing. So there's lots of social drama about on our campus over AI. It's not just the technical things, so what can we do and what can't we do? It's also the political impacts and the social impacts, and we're really trying to work all that out.
Yeah, these are not simple problems to address. There's the transparency component of like, well, let me just at least I'll be upfront with how we're using it and why. But then there's always going to be a diversity of opinions on, well, what does that mean? And to your point on value, right? Great. And so in our last little topic before we head over to Q&A, so I hope folks have a couple of questions. I've got some others for folks if we find the need. But on the accessibility front, as part of Discovery, certainly that came up during our conversation with prepping, came up during the workshop yesterday multiple times. What we, up until now, have kind of been thinking about accessibility as a bit of a, let's just hustle our way over to April, get the checkbox checked, and not necessarily move on, but at least be at a new foundation or a new stepping stone. However, as you think about accessibility as part of infrastructure for this future of discovery, how are you guys grappling with that in terms of organizing the metadata or other pieces of your repository to be a bit of a stepping stone towards AI discovery? Sarah, can I start with you?
Yeah, that's a big question.
It's a big question.
It's a big question, a big topic. And I think all of us are grappling with that. Certainly the more accessible something is, the better discoverable it's going to be, sort of at the core. We're really actually at the intersection of AI and accessibility at the University of Central Florida. So we're taking it right now as we need to make sure that all of our content is accessible. That's obviously a compliance piece. But then the more accessible we can do that, the more discoverable it's going to be. And so what is the role of AI in that? We've been employing a lot of Gen AI tools to help us better make those works accessible, whether it's using remediation tools to double check something, whether it's using transcription tools to do our transcriptions and speed up that workflow process. And we found it to be quite accurate. Those kinds of things, even our metadata librarian is using Gen AI to create fast headings, other kinds of keywords that then we can batch upload and put into the repository again, just for better discoverability. So it's a multiple phase process, and I think it's going to take us some time, but I definitely want to have those conversations with you all about what you're doing with accessibility as well.
So on my campus, we have a kind of interesting dichotomy here. One is my general counsel, and we're a regional comprehensive, so we're about 8,000 students. My general counsel said, "Oh, the Keep, yeah, that's an archive, so you're exempt."
Easy peasy.
The whole thing.
Dunzo.
The whole thing. And I'm a one-person shop, so I have to admit I kind of ran with that. But the other side of it is, though, the Keep has been fairly successful on my campus to the point that I'm getting questions from faculty that really have nothing to do with the Keep. They're starting to think of the Keep as kind of, oh, that's the answer for everything, which is great in a way. Yeah. I've already gotten a question from my dean of a graduate school who was like, well, the master's theses get deposited into the Keep, and these need to be ADA compliant. So how can we work with the Keep to make sure? So there's this impulse to say, oh, that's a tool, and that might make this thing go faster, right? So that's just starting to crop up.
Fascinating. Yeah, the different perspectives. We had a great table topic group yesterday where we all covered the being in the weeds, being at the altitude, where we can slap the word archive in some places, but that we still want to build inclusive repositories regardless of what our administration says. So how do we kind of balance the rigor of, yep, team of one, and yep, 200,000 items that need to be remediated. Oh my goodness. So it's a lot. But okay, so thank you so much for that dialogue. So in the last, let me think, we have about 10, 12 minutes or so remaining in our session. So I wanted to open this up to the audience, and we can share up here, right? Are there any questions for our panelists around discoverability, AI tools, integrity, et cetera? Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Not just yet.
Okay. Now? Okay. I actually have two questions, but first one, will AI referrals be part of future dashboards? And that might be a question for me. And would that part of the dashboard for AI referrals help us sell repositories to the contributors?
So thank you for the question, and thank you for the redirect. Yeah, so on the dashboards today, we do have that tab for referrers. You can see kind of the source of your traffic. It's evolving, right? As Sarah said, you're going to see, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google / Gemini gets a little kind of concatenated a bit, I think, in the results, right? So we're going to have to be more and more mindful of how to classify the incoming referrers. I'd also shout out to Saad on the comment of, do we only share what made it through the firewall, or do we also need to surface other things that have been blocked so that you can be mindful also of, well, shoot, what happened before they got to the dashboard? Because I think that's that is becoming a meaningful metric for us to keep track of. And then, sorry, what was your other question on refers and how to use that to advocate?
Would that information in the dashboard actually be a tool that could help us sell putting your content into the repository?
Oh, absolutely. Sarah?
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. I do think we get a little bit of push-pull with those refers. We've had a few people who are like, oh my gosh, why is my stuff in there? And then that's an educative opportunity where we talk about licensing your content in publicly accessible spaces and open access and what that means. And there is a push-pull tension there. So I do think you're going to get different perspectives of people who are like, that's awesome. My stuff is now in more places, more impact, potentially more citations. And that's going to be great for promotion and tenure. And then you're going to have the people who are like, that is not my intent, and I did not want my stuff in there, to Todd's point about consent. And so what does that look like? So for me, it's less of outreach and more of an opportunity to frame things contextually so that people better understand the ecosystem that we're working in right now. And to some degree, helping provide some positive aspects of ChatGPT or these other tools, because your content is successfully getting referred to in that place and is not a hallucinated result. So there is some positivity there, and that their content is, again, reaching more audiences.
I would agree with all of that, and I think that definitely it would need to be a case of, again, trust. That if they can come to my repository and I would use the dashboard to show them that LLMs are learning off of our repository, if I can offer them CC signals to say you have the option to opt in, opt out, that's going to be huge. And I think a big part of what we're trying to do, what Digital Commons is trying to do, what institutions like UC Irving are doing, is building institutional intelligence, where it's not just using AI as a tool, it's building AI into the institution. And I am very concerned, as Maxim pointed this part out, I am very concerned about the digital divide between institutions. EIU cannot afford to do what UC Irving is doing. And so what is our answer to that? Because otherwise, if that gap keeps spreading, I think that really doesn't benefit anyone. So that's a challenge we need to meet.
Are there any other questions? Or comments? Yeah, I actually say pressure test some of the stuff that we're saying up here. We're all just living the journey, so I like healthy
Comment
friction.
and a question. Comment, we recently at Arkansas State University, we have a new CTO, CIO, whatever, I don't know. He's in charge of all the
Tech info?
ITS stuff. And we now have, okay, our mascot is the Red Wolves. His name is Howl. And then there's also his lady friend, Scarlet. But you can go to our website and ask Howl a question, and it's all trained on just like A-State materials. And our librarians have been really, really fantastic, especially our associate dean. Like, all of our lid guides got fed in there immediately. So if you are asking Howl questions, you should be getting good librarian answers, right? Unfortunately, that also means that if you go ask, like, where can I find a notary, the only answer is me. Mm-hmm. There are more notaries on campus, but unfortunately, Howl just knows about me. So that's kind of the... Chatbots certainly can be very helpful. On the flip side of that, like, we also have a chat with a librarian module, and you only talk to real people on that one, right? So my question was going back to using AI to accelerate workflows. And one of the biggest things that I run into is I'm institutional repository librarian. I am not a metadata librarian. And I don't want to have to worry about double and core subject heading stuff. That's not my ball game. It's a little out of left field for me. But we like to have those double and core Library of Congress subject heading connections for like our discoverability layer and everything. And you mentioned that you have your metadata librarian doing keywords. And so we treat the subject headings and the keywords separately because the Digital Commons search bar works off of relevancy, whereas the Double and Core Library of Congress works more with our discoverability layer in our library system. So have you found any tools that help with getting subject headings that are relevant and work, especially when I'm ingesting theses and dissertations that I'm like, those are super cool. Chemist, biologist, statistician, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'll have to share her contact with you. She does subject headings as well. So she's doing all of those things. She has a grant-funded project where she got tokens to work and experiment with Gen AI this last year, and she has, said that it's pretty good and that she's had very good experience with it. So I can share her contact with you. I'm sure she'd be delighted to talk all things metadata with you about that, but she does do subject headings too. But I feel that struggle of how do you optimize for things you're not an expert in. So when can you do that and leverage those tools?
And
Yes?
So thank you so much for your comment about the digital divide, right? I'm sure that's something that is on our minds as we are always asked to do more with less. And so I'm wondering if you could share some of the strategies that you are using in your institutions in order to combat the digital divide problem with, institutions that are not as well funded as, let's say, as the University of California system, although they're also having problems, right? Or private institutions who definitely have more money than public institutions. What are some strategies that you can share with us?
Well, this is not a good example. All right. The caveat. One of the strategies could be that you partner with other comprehensives and you do things as a consortium, right? Now, the reason why I'm saying that's not a good example is there's a warning here, I guess. We did that as the state of Illinois with Adobe, and we did a consortium agreement with the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois did with Adobe. Adobe came back this year, and again, this is all stuff I'm privy to because of being chair of faculty senate. Adobe came back this year, said, well, we have these new AI tools that we just built, and so you're going to need to pay 25% more, to which the state of Illinois said, no. And so the current result of that is, in my opinion, Adobe got a little petty about it and said, well, then you don't get all our full suite of services now. So it's not only that the state of Illinois didn't have the option to just simply say, we don't want to use those tools for that price, can we just keep our current contract? No, Adobe came back and said, you don't get that either. You're going to get Adobe Lite or whatever they call it. So now, how that's all going to, eventually fall out, who knows? But I think that as we kind of try to work together as a community of institutions in partnership with Digital Commons and Elsevier, and try to solve these problems for institutions that don't have the resources to do their own Zot GPT. We have to see how we can. This whole thing about AI is it's supposed to be this great productivity, right? And I think we can get there, but I think we have to go through this growing pain stage to make sure everyone is in the same boat, right? So people aren't being left behind on it. So I guess one of my other answers to your question might be to see how in the meantime can we use the available tools to try to increase productivity, to realize some financial gains maybe, that then try to build a system. But I think it is going to take a lot of cooperation. I guarantee you, EIU can't do it alone. We're going to have to work with others to make something happen.
Great. Okay. So okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Sarah, you mentioned using some AI tools for remediation, for accessibility. Are any of those tools free? And do they work well? Because I've had mixed results.
Yeah, there's a lot of different tools out there. We'll talk a little bit more this afternoon in another session that we're doing. I would say some of the things that we're using are the basics, like Adobe. We're using things like Rev for transcription. So a lot of it is free things or subscribe that our institution has decided that they're going to support. A lot of those subscriptions are at the individual level. So like Rev, we pay individual licenses. So like Paige and Martha and our students get those individual licenses. They have to log in. So there's some complexity with the tools as well. So I think that is one challenge. And then we've been exploring Adobe and AWS, like the Ohio State and ASU have done, but as you mentioned, cost prohibitive and scalability is the other thing. So we could definitely chat some more about some of those. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah and Todd. Thank you for the great questions and comments, and again, adding to this growing corpus of experiences and opportunities and all the things. I love the challenges pivot of it is an opportunity, and this is such a great time to be alive. It's scary and it's exciting, and we're in it together. So thank you for your time, and we'll wrap this up for today. Thank you.